Hi there. Welcome to the historic Licking County Jail. My name is Nelson Smith, and I have the privilege of welcoming you to the jail today because I did 6 years in this jail back in the 60s. Not for anything that I did wrong. My mother was a matron and head cook, and along with her job came an apartment on the top floor of the building here. So my little sister and I, all through junior high and high school, called this place home. It was our home. The apartment was part of Mom's compensation, and I lived here for 6 years. By the way, this is my mom, Nora Smith. She was a matron and head cook. She'd like to make her more famous than anybody else here. Anyway, my job today is to give you a little bit of history about the jail, and then we'll walk through the jail and I'll tell a few stories about living here. Starting with the history, the land that the jail sits on and next to us where the farm market is was purchased by the county commissioners in June of 1888. They paid $11,000 for the property and promptly hired an architect. His name was J.W. Yost, and he was ordered to design and build the finest sheriff's living quarters and county jail in the state of Ohio. And when he was done, that's exactly what we had. The construction bid was $68,685. When the jail was complete, it came in at about $120,000, and I always thought that it was because of overruns and just little extra things that got it added in. And I finally found out that the original design was 2 floors of residential in the front for the sheriff's living quarters and 3 floors of cell blocks in the back for men's prisoners. During the design phase, they changed it to 3 floors in the front and 4 floors in the back, adding a women's cell block. So the cell block for women necessitated having a matron, so that's why the 3rd floor in the front was added. So the front of the jail is residential. 1st and 2nd floor has always been the sheriff's home, and the 3rd floor was a matron's home. And then in the back, like I say, 4 floors of cell blocks. One of the amazing things to me about the construction of this building is that they bought the land in June of 1888. This place opened in November of 1889. That's less than 18 months to build this building without the heavy equipment that we have now. So that has always kind of amazed me. The stone on the outside of the building came from the Millersburg Stone Company here in Ohio, and we have 2 guesses as to how they got the stone here. Of course, there's a railroad track a couple of 100 yards south of us here, but right outside the windows is Canal Street, which used to be the Ohio Canal. So we think the stone came down on barges and offloaded right here on site. So the original color of the stone was called a rose pink sandstone. And when we go down to the basement, there are a couple of stones you can still see some of the original color in, but the outside of the jail now is black. And that's because when the jail was built, every house in Newark had a coal burning furnace, and the railroad tracks are a couple of 100 yards away, so all that soot sucked into that sandstone, and it just turned black, I imagine, by about 1900. We had her cleaned several years ago. Couldn't power wash it or sandblast it because it's sandstone, so it was just an acid wash that they put on it, and it kind of ran down and pulled out grit. When we said we were going to clean it, I was afraid it was going to go back to pink, and with our haunted jail here, Jail of Terror, I was a little worried about people not being too impressed with a pink haunted jail. So she stayed black, but she's a clean black now. And the Reese Family Foundation here in Licking County put up the money for the cleaning and for redoing all the joints on all the mortar. It was like $250,000. And they foot that bill for us. And then after they got that done, they started building the farm market next door, and they thought the jail needed to be lighted a little better in the evening, so they put uplighting all around the jail for another $250,000. So we really appreciate those donations. We are in the middle now of renovating and doing some rehab work that will need more funding for, but we raise it here and there, and it's coming along. We finally got started on the renovation. I promised a couple of stories about living here. My favorite story when I think I was probably 15 years old, back in the 1960s. Kids running the streets in that time era wasn't a big deal. I had a small Honda scooter, and I was allowed to ride it at that age. And I'd come in late at night, and the desk sergeant that sat in a room right behind us here, 9 times out of 10 he was asleep. He'd be sitting there in his chair, kick back and have a cigar in his mouth and ashes down his shirt, and I'd have to wake him up every night to let me in. Well, the part of this story that, as we go through the tour, you have to imagine a little bit different construction. I always came in the north gate, big cell block doors out here, or cell bar doors, and right up through the cell blocks and up to our apartment. Well, there's I call it the cage. It was a wire mesh screen between the office and the cell block area, and then above it was a foyer that went up 3 floors that just had bars up. But the bars didn't go all the way up. It got to the 3rd floor, and it was a space about that big above the bars, and I never understood the security of that, but it was open. So I'd come in late at night, and Jack would be asleep, and like I say, I'd have to wake him up all the time. He never complained, but he'd grumble a little, and he'd get the key in, and he'd go out and unlock the cage and let me in, and run up the steps past the cell blocks. I did that for quite a while, and I got to realize that I knew where that key was. So, and Jack was asleep, so I just kind of sneak into the office and pick up the key and go out, unlock the cage, put the key back, pull the cage shut, and go up steps. Well, after about a month, I realized when I pulled that cage shut, it wasn't locking. It was still unlocked. I was leaving the jail unlocked all night long. And I made a promise to the Sheriff McElroy that hired my mother that we'd keep a little security in mind when we ran in and out of this place. And so I had to quit stealing the key. So the next thing I decided to do, I came home one night, Jack was asleep, and I looked up at those bars in that top rail, and I thought, hell, I can do this. So I didn't bother to wake Jack. I just put my foot up on one hinge, got a hold of the first set of bars, and up I went. Over the bars, over the rail, and into the apartment. I did that for about 3 months. Never got, well, I actually did it for a couple of years, never got caught. But after I'd been doing it for about 3 months, I got home late one night, and Mom and my little sister were not home. Mom's bedroom is 2 floors right above this room. It's got windows off to the side, and Jack's office is right around the corner here. Well, Mom's bedroom just right above us, basically. And since they weren't home, I thought, well, I'm gonna play a little trick on Jack. I had an old firecracker called an M80. They were about that long, about that big around. It was just a little stick of dynamite. And I went to Mom's bedroom window, opened it, lit that fuse, and let the fuse get down about halfway, and I tossed it off to the side. It never even hit the ground. It went off right beside Jack's window. And I giggled, and I went to bed, figured I just scared the crap out of Jack. And it was okay for a few minutes until I started hearing sirens downtown. I thought, oh, there must be a fire. But there were a heck of a lot of sirens. So I finally got up and I looked out the window, and the jail was surrounded. Every city cop, county deputy, couple of state troopers, they're all out here around the jail, facing the jail with lights and sirens going. I got on the phone down to Jack's desk and I said, Jack, what's going on? He says, Nelson, stay in the apartment, a prisoner's got a gun. I never told him anything different. I went back to bed. They were here all night long. They woke every prisoner, searched every cell. They never did find a gun. So, and I never admitted that story until 2 sheriffs later. I told Sheriff Marston that that'd been me back in the 60s that had the jail surrounded. My second favorite story is about a prisoner that was here when we moved in, and I assume I'm allowed to use his name. I've done it in almost every tour I've done. His name was Buck Allen, and he was a prisoner when we moved in. He was a prisoner here when I left to go join the Navy. He was a prisoner here every time I came home on leave. And I honestly think he'd have been a prisoner here when Mom retired if he hadn't have passed away before. But the story goes that back in the late 50s, Buck was downtown Newark, and he was taking some new medication that he wasn't used to. And he was a little shaky, a little wobbly. and he got arrested for being drunk in public. Well, he tried to explain that it was a medication. Cops had evidently heard that story before. So he had to go to court. Well, he told the judge the same story. And the judge wasn't buying it either, and he was about to pass sentence on Buck. And Buck interrupted him and said, "Your Honor, if you send me to jail, the county will support me for the rest of my life." He gave him 30 days. Buck never left here for the rest of his life. He'd do his 30 days, 60 days, whatever he'd be arrested for, and go out and immediately do something to get arrested again. So he would be gone a couple of days at a time, but basically he was here the rest of his life. He was here so often that they didn't even clean up his cell when they let him go, because they knew he'd be back. And he made him a trustee. He would do odd jobs out in the yard or around the jail, but his favorite job was helping Mom in the kitchen. Mom was a good cook. I never worried about her being able to handle the cooking problem because she was a great cook. Well, Buck liked her cooking too, and he liked helping her in the kitchen. But he was up in his cell on the 3rd floor one Thursday morning. Deputy came up and kicked his bunk and said, "Buck, come on, it's time to go." He woke up slowly and kind of coming around a little bit. And, oh, no, I can't leave today. And the deputy says, "What do you mean you can't leave today? Your sentence is up." He said, "This is Thanksgiving. Mom's fixing turkey." So the deputy said, "Well, sorry, there's nothing I can do about that. You're out of here." And they brought him down, put him out the north gate right here on the alley. He went to the end of the alley. There used to be a bakery on the corner of 2nd and the alley down here. It's called Don F's Bakery. Buck found a rock, threw it through the window, sat on the curb and waited for the cops. He was back for Mom's Thanksgiving dinner. Okay, welcome to part of the sheriff's living quarters. We're on the 2nd floor, and the room behind me was the bedroom for most of the sheriffs, and I do not go in that room. 4 sheriffs had heart attacks in that room. 3 of them died in there. Sheriff Howarth at least made it to the hospital before he passed away. And all 4 sheriffs were a lot younger than I am. So I've just kind of made it a rule that I stay out of that room at my age. But anyway, I break that rule. I broke that rule once a year for 2 or 3 years because we have an event here called the Jailbreak 5K. And I'm the elected jailbird, so I'm in the stupid striped shirts and the little goofy hat, and the first year that we did the jailbreak, I just ran out the 1st floor door and into the crowd, and they chased me down the street, and that started the jailbreak. 2nd year, I thought, well, let's make it a little better than that, so I climbed out a window on the 1st floor, which is only about that far off the ground, no big deal. But the last 2 years, I decided I'm going out the 2nd floor. So I came through here, out on the landing out here, threw a rope ladder off the balcony and climbed down this rope ladder and then kind of ran into the crowd. But each time halfway down the ladder, I faked a little slip and everybody, "Oh God, the old man's gonna fall." But anyway, that's the reason their heart attacks in here is the reason I very rarely go into this room. Okay, welcome to our apartment. We're on the 3rd floor in the front of the jail, the matron's quarters. Right now we're in the living room, and one of the stories that I have about this room is that there used to be a print shop across the street. I think it was either Newark Leader or Spencer Walker Press. Memory's a little foggy there. But it caught fire one night. It was a cold winter night. Firefighters were down there battling the blaze, and the wind was blowing. They were getting water back on them, and it was freezing. So nasty night to work a fire. And Mom got up and saw what was going on. She didn't hesitate. She went down to the kitchen and started making coffee. And Kathy and I were shuttling coffee back and forth all evening to the firefighters across the street. So just one of the little things that we had nothing to do with the fire, but we made sure that the firefighters were at least keeping warm with a little bit of coffee. Okay, this was my bedroom for 6 years. It's a very small bedroom. I thought it was a lot larger when I was a kid. Had a great view of the South Hills of Newark. Got to watch the trains all the time. And there's a billboard right down here. We called it the subway back then. but now there are restaurants called Subways, so it's just the underpass. But there's a billboard right beside it that all summer long in 1966, there was an ad on that billboard from Walker and Patat Ford, which is now, I think, Coghlan Ford. But anyway, it wasn't 66, it was 63, because it was a 63 Ford Mustang on that billboard for 1995. So I had to get up and look at that billboard every day. Never got one, but it was just one of those dreams. Another story about this room. I entered into the soapbox derby race when I was a kid. Not the derby cars at the Scouts race. This was a 6 foot long handmade race car that all the kids built themselves, supposedly. And we raced down the hill at Hyde Park. It was the old drag strip out in Heath. And we raced down the hill instead of up the hill like the dragsters would use. But anyway, my sponsor was my high school math or junior high math teacher, Mrs. Monroe, and she wanted me to paint the car royal blue. She owned a hardware store out in the west end of Newark, and she supplied the paint, so I painted it royal blue. Little side note, the gentleman that I told you about, the prisoner, Buck Allen, he kind of helped me build the soapbox derby down in the basement. But we got it all done and got her painted, and I cleaned out my brushes, and I had the traditional big old coffee can with turpentine or whatever we'd put in it to clean out my brushes, and I was going to dump it down the drain right in the middle of the floor in the basement. But it had all this blue gunk in it, and I almost poured it in there, and I thought, if I pour this in and it clogs that drain, it's going to be real obvious who did it, because it's blue. So I even had a better thought. I'd come up to my bedroom, open the window, and just throw it out into the air. And as it dissipated in the air, it would flutter down on the grass, and no big deal. Well, just as I threw that gunk out the window, a big gust of wind come up against the jail, and for about 4 years, right underneath my window, was this big, ugly blue splotch. But nobody ever asked me about it. Never got in trouble. I never got in trouble for anything here. I got away with all kinds of stuff. So I enjoyed the jail as my home. Okay, this is our kitchen and dining room. Had a dining room table here. I'm not real sure why we had a kitchen, because Mom did all the cooking for the prisoners down in her kitchen, and we kind of partook of the food that she was fixing for them instead of making her cook again up here. So anyway, a couple of stories about this room. From right here, 10 feet away is a women's cell block, and this is our apartment. That's how close we were to the jail part of this. But anyway, Sheriff McElroy, when he hired my mother, promised Kathy and I that we could do anything in the jail that we wanted to. Like I said, as long as you keep a little security in mind. So I never asked permission to do anything. I would let him know what I was doing if it was something that might interest him. But basically, I never had to ask permission. Every sheriff honored that promise. So when Sheriff Howarth was sheriff, and he was an impressive man. He wore the uniform. I always thought he was about 6'8", but I guess he was only about 6'2". But to me, he was huge, and very impressive in his uniform. Well, I told him one day that a bunch of my buddies from the Advocate, I worked in the mailroom in the Advocate, and it was just a block away. I invited them over to play poker, and I had poker in the county jail. How cool was that? So they all agreed to come over, and I let Sheriff Howard know that we were going to be playing poker in the kitchen upstairs, and he never told me no. He said, there won't be money on the table, will there, Nels? I said, oh, no, Sheriff, there won't be any money on the table. He says, there's not going to be beer, is there? That's back when 18-year-olds could buy 3-2 beer, lower grade, and it was legal. And I said, no, nobody's going to have the brass to carry beer into the county jail, so there won't be any beer on the table. And I said, by the way, Sheriff, just so you know, the kitchen door will not be locked. Never told him anything more, just a little subtle hint that that door would be open. So we're about an hour into the poker game. We're sitting here at the dining room table. There's money on the table, and there's beer on the table, and I think I had 7 guys here. All of a sudden this kitchen door flies open and here's Sheriff Howard just taking up the whole doorway. He takes one step in and he looks at these guys and says, don't anybody move, don't touch a thing. I want all your names and your parents' phone numbers, I'm calling them all. And he steps over to the table and he's got a notepad and he's taking down names and phone numbers, and got to about the fourth or fifth one and I lost it. We didn't have the word punk back then, but these guys had all just been punked by the county sheriff. So it's a poker game they'll remember for a long time. Another story from just about right here in this spot. Like I said, I never worried about Mom being able to handle the cooking detail since she was a good cook. I was concerned that she'd be able to handle women prisoners. That was going to be her main job. So she wasn't a big woman. She was only about 5'5" maybe, and just average size. So it concerned me that she may have a little physical problem taking care of women. Well, she put my mind to rest the first night she ever had to lock a woman up. About 2 o'clock in the morning, the desk sergeant called up to Mom's phone, said she had a prisoner coming up. 2 city cops were bringing her up on the elevator. She was to meet her at the elevator and lock her up. Well, I was 13 years old, thought I was the man of the house. I was only about 5 foot tall, if that. And I was coming over here. The elevator's right around the corner here from the kitchen door. I came to the kitchen door in case she needed me. I was going to be here, and it didn't matter if she had 2 cops with her. I was here to protect my mother. But as they're coming up on the elevator, I could hear this woman swearing and hitting these cops. You could hear the slaps and the thuds. Oh God, Mom's in trouble. The elevator door opens and this woman comes out with her fist drawn, and my mother grabbed her by the wrist and put her on her knees. And she said, lady, if you ever hit me, they'll carry you out of here. I quit talking back to my mother. And I quit worrying about her too. As a matter of fact, she, other than that forceful incident there, I don't think she ever had a problem with a prisoner the whole time she was here, over 24, 25 years. And she treated the ladies like she would treat her own daughters. That they'd done something wrong, they were in a bad point in their life, they didn't need to be kicked around and ridiculed. She treated them with respect and was basically very good to them. And it was amazing how many times at Christmas she'd get a Christmas card from former prisoners thanking her for how well she treated them while she was here. As a matter of fact, I was walking through coming in past the sheriff's office one day, and it was a lady in the office said she wanted to talk to the sheriff. And he said, well, what's it concerning? He says, the matron. And it caught my attention, so I kind of hung around and eavesdropped a little bit. And she wasn't there to complain. She was there to let the sheriff know that she appreciated how well Mom had treated her when she was here. Okay, this is the 3rd floor cell block, 4 men, and most of the time this floor was not locked down with a set of bars out here. We had a trustee that had a cell back on the left side. That was my favorite trustee, Buck. And he'd kind of come and go through this cell block as he needed to. But the only cell that I ever remember being locked on this floor was right here, the first cell on the right. And it was an attorney from New York who was in for 6 months on a manslaughter charge. He'd been out drinking with his wife, and they drove home and he was in a car accident. She was killed and he got 6 months for manslaughter. So as I would run past all the cell blocks every night to come home, every once in a while, I'd drift in and say hello to him. Kind of always thought I wanted to be an attorney, so it was interesting to talk to him. But the only thing interesting that ever came out of it is that he taught me how to play gin rummy through the bars on his cell. And if you'd like to come on in, when we do a tour, one of the things that I always tend to do is, as several people get in past me, I like to surprise them with that noise from a lockup in the jail. So with their back to me, I slam this thing and kind of get their attention. And of course I let them out, but I never give them very much warning that that's coming. I'll hold a few people back so that they can all giggle at them. But and this set of bars is always a good photo op for the kids, and people have their arms hanging through, looking real forlorn, I guess. Okay, welcome to the chapel. I apologize for all the construction stuff laying around. We're in the middle of some renovation. The chapel was very often used by visiting preachers. Every Sunday, different preacher would come in, offer a sermon, and prisoners would be allowed to come down and sit and listen to the sermon. I never could figure out if they got religion while they were here or just wanted an excuse to get out of their cell, so they took advantage of sitting through a sermon. My story about this room, let's see, we were going from the 9th to the 10th grade. I was at junior high school through the 9th grade at Ben Franklin. And just as we were finishing the 9th grade, one of our buddies, Larry Smart, was moving to Florida, and we wanted to have a surprise going away party for him. So I let the sheriff know that we were going to have a party down in the chapel. And again, no questions, just keep it simple. Now, it was planned to be simple. I had 40 junior high kids crammed in here, hiding, waiting to bring Larry in for the surprise. Well, we were across the street. It was Alma's Diner across the street. They had a pinball machine, and Larry kept winning on the daggone thing. So I finally had to start tilting it against him to get him to finish up so he'd come over to the party. And finally got him in here, and all of them jumped out and surprised him. And the plan for the party was to stay in the chapel, but the guys found the elevator, and they were running the elevator all evening long, stopping at different floors and visiting with prisoners just through the outside bars. Their favorite floor, obviously, was going up to talk to the women on the top floor. And the women never really bothered me when I was a kid, but I noticed a little difference when I came home on leave from the Navy in my dress blues. They paid a little more attention then, but I was young, so it was okay.
And that, my friends, is going to be a wrap on the history of the old Licking County Jail here. It has been fun, it's been creepy, and that's what I consider history documented. If you guys enjoyed this video, please feel free to give it a like, a subscribe, a comment, and or share. It would be greatly appreciated. Until next time, friends, stay safe and Godspeed.